all of us were on the occasion of National Youth Day. I request Ashokji to please begin the session.
Namaste, everyone. I have the pleasure in welcoming all of you. I'm sure many of you know about Sewa International. Just in case you don't, let me very briefly mention that that Sewa International's focus is serving the unserved and ignite the bhav of Seva across Indians and all humans globally. Sewa Samwaad is a platform where all of us can learn from each other's experiences. I'm proud to welcome you all to the session of Sewa Samwaad. We at Sewa International feel privileged that we are through various sister organizations present in 25 countries. On the birth of Swami Vivekananda, we are privileged to be here and discussing the current phase with Dr. Balasubramaniam, popularly known as Dr. Balu, who himself is a follower of Swami Vivekananda. Motivated by the message of Swami Vivekananda, he sees his life's mission as building a resurgent India by inspiring leadership in the youth of our country. Dr. Balu is a member of Capacity Building Commission, Government of India, development scholar, policy advocate, and author. He has written books like Voices from the Grassroots and I, the Citizen, that are compilation of narratives and reflections of a development expert. Dr. Balu hails from Mysuru district. He's done his MBBS and then he earned his MPhil in hospital administration and health system management from BITS Pilani. He has a master's in public administration from the Harvard University. His living habits were greatly influenced by the teachings of Swami Vivekananda. At the age of 19, he founded the Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement based on the principles of Ahimsa, Satya, Seva, and Tyaga. He has spent last 36 years of his life in the service of the rural and tribal poor in the forests of India. He is also the founder and chairman of Grassroots Research and Advocacy Movement, a public policy think tank in India. He is currently a visiting professor at Cornell University and at IIT Delhi. He teaches courses on leadership and human development. He coaches and mentors senior leaders in the non-profit, corporate, government, and education sectors globally. Apart from running leadership workshops for people from these sectors, he is also a member of technical group set up by SEBI, that is Security and Exchange Board of India, for setting up the social stock exchange. He has authored 7 books. I mentioned 2 of them already. And his latest book is Leadership Lessons for Daily Living. So I welcome Dr. Balasubramaniam to address us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashokji, and good evening to all of you. And wishing you all a very, I can't say happy, but a very powerfully charged National Youth Day on this day of Swami Vivekananda's calendar birthday. You know, the name Swami Vivekananda is something which I'm sure virtually everybody across India would in some way or other feel connected. The moment you hear the name, it's inspiring. I remember some statements of Swamiji. You know, there's a collection of how Vivekananda himself talks about himself, and different parts of his book, excerpts of it, wherever he's referred to himself, is a popular book called Swami Vivekananda on himself. And then as part of some narratives, he says about how the work that he did, just imagine the power and potential of that extraordinary, I can't even call him a human being. He is beyond a description. We can't talk about him as a divine person. Is he a force? What kind of a powerful magnetic personality he must have been? Is it just an idea? He lives amongst us, through us every day. For many of us who really want to build a resurgent India, I think Vivekananda expresses himself. The thought of Swamiji and his message is constant expression through all of us. And therefore, it's extremely significant that we understand him and connect to the topic that I'm going to share some thoughts on today. And I think it's a very wonderful topic, aspiration, potential, and the future. And I'm not going to speak anything unconnected to Vivekananda. So full disclosure, whatever I speak, all I know is only about his work. So I'm going to see, and I'm not saying what I'm saying is going to be the gospel truth in terms of aspiration or potential. Though I do mix a lot with young people. Every year I meet and interact and talk to at least minimum of 100,000 people. And I hope I can understand the pulse of these young people today, though it's very dynamic. Every day it's a new learning for me. But I'm going to speak of it from the lens of Swami Vivekananda. And so I'd just like to give a little understanding of that extraordinary personality. His real working life, if you can call it that, was 9 years. 1893, when he came to be known for all of us as Vivekananda, and he was earlier when he was in his Parivrajaka Jivana, walking across India, he was known as an unknown sannyasi called Vividishananda. For some days he had that name also. He had several names. One of them was Vividishananda. Later on, we all got to know him as Vivekananda. 9 years, just imagine the power and potential of this extraordinary spiritual force. All that he did. And he himself writes, even to understand, interpret, and live the work that Swamiji left behind for us would take a minimum of 2,000 years for a person. That's the depth of his work. And as I see it as my life's mission to just try to read and understand him. And every day I see him differently. And I was remembering some 15 years or longer, I wrote a book called Swami Vivekananda as I See Him. And in the way I saw Vivekananda and what he meant to me at that age and the inspiration that I received from him. And I was just rereading this book last week, my own book. And it suddenly struck me, oh my God, is this how I know Vivekananda? And I suddenly realized he means something much more to me. I'm not saying what he meant was all not complete, but something much, much more. So I was asking myself, has the relevance of Swamiji and his message altered? Or is my ability to understand Swamiji altered? And I finally concluded that Vivekananda is like a bright light. It's like the sun. The farther you are, the light is there. But you see it in a particular way. You may even interpret it as a candle. As you get closer and closer to this extraordinary light, the light does not alter. Our ability to interpret the light is what becomes better and better and finer and finer. So I feel the more you try to live his message, the more you try to go through it as an immersive experience in your life, the more you start understanding Swamiji differently. So what I'm speaking today would be from one level of understanding of Vivekananda. So that's the second disclosure I want to make. So it may not even be complete, because for all of us, I'm sure it's a work in progress. Understanding him is work in progress, because in his own timeline, if it's 2000 years, 30, 40 years of understanding him is a very small, minuscule appreciation of that extraordinary personality. So see my sharing of thoughts today from that perspective. Now let's understand Swamiji and his message from understanding the young people of today and young people of India itself. Today you look at young people, the joy that they bring to the table, the energy that they bring, the creativity that they have, the extraordinary ideas they can solve. And I'm privileged to be working with young people, even in the Capacity Building Commission. It's something like the story that we all read in our childhood, that demon has been given a task of making the dog's tail straight. Sometimes I feel that way with these young people. I give them some task in the morning thinking that it will take 3-4 days for me to sit back with them. In 6 hours, they're back again. So you have to run the race with them now. Suddenly I realized that I'm getting tired running with young people. I thought that I'll make them tired. But now I realize 20, 21, 22, 3-year-olds working with me, they keep you on your toes. That's the one kind of energy that they bring to the table. And I think there's great hope for this country. I'm convinced that India is at the verge of extraordinary transition. And it is these young people who are going to be taking us to that place of, that great throne in which Vivekananda wanted to see Mother India, resplendent in her glory sitting. And I'm very confident. My only prayer is it happens in my lifetime. So that youth, the energy, etc., is on one side. And the other side, if you look at it, 75 years of independence. We're celebrating a 75th year. We're having Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav this year, year-long celebration. And if you look at it, thousands of unicorns in our country. People who want to make money on one side. People like Kumar and others who are in IITs and other places who give up mainstream careers and say, I want to work for the country on the other side. I know a lot of IIT young engineers. I see them all very funnily that some of them get into public service, into the IAS, and they also want to serve. Many of them get into Ramakrishna Mission and become monks today. So you see this young people today are suddenly having a diversity of ways in which they express themselves. So you sit back and ask yourself, what is their aspiration? What can be the aspiration of 18, 19-year-old? Sometimes you're fascinated at what they do and what they're doing. And then most of them, I also find something very, I wouldn't say strange, very normal, is many of them mirror their lives. They're at that age where they're very impressionable. They're seeking role models. If Narayan Murthy becomes a role model, that's one way of looking at it. Hopefully people like Veerappan and Dawood Ibrahims don't become role models, so they don't go that way. Or one of the seniors become a bureaucrat, he becomes a role model. So they're all very impressionable. And with the little experience that they have, they think that imitating that role model is one opportunity for them to grow in life. And we, in our country, culturally, we iconize. We are very happy iconizing them. Whether we live the iconic message or not is different. We iconize Ambedkar, we iconize Vivekananda, we iconize Aurobindo, Mahatma Gandhi, and then we'll give bhashan after bhashan based on their storylines. But how many of us actually try to live that icon's message is another aspect. So I think I then go back to the third thing I want to connect all this in the aspiration piece is some years ago, I think 8 or 10 years ago, I'm not sure when, Time or Newsweek, one of these magazines, brought out a cover page article saying India is going to have a problem soon, they wrote. And the problem they wrote is India is enormously privileged to have a generation of the most qualified, most advanced thinking young people as a community, as a cohort growing in numbers. And therefore, they predict a problem. Within 15, 20 years, India is going to have the problem of a highly qualified people who are retiring at middle age. So they said India's problem is that by 35, 40 people have either made enough money or burnt out so much that they start retiring. And they had actually predicted this problem. And it's a very strange problem. And if you look around the world today, most of the major corporate entities are headed by Indians. And it's a matter of joy and privilege. But how many of those corporate entities actually are embedded in the Indian ecosystem is a different question I want to ask. And that's where I would connect it to the potential and the future that I would like to talk about. First, let me finish the aspirations. So this country, on one side, energetic, extremely enthused, qualified, capable ecosystem. On the other extreme, and the extreme which I have lived most of my life in, is an extreme divide, whether it's a digital divide, whether it's a caste divide, whether it's a class divide. Having lived my life 30 years amongst indigenous tribal communities and the suffering that I have seen firsthand, and an appreciation of poverty from the lens of these people, you start wondering, is this the same India that is so full of energy and waiting to transition into a global superpower? On one side, you still find the struggles for drinking water. You still find the challenges for 3 meals a day. You still find 30% of people going with less than 1500 kilocalories a day. And you start worrying. And you start thinking of the message of Vivekananda when he says, I call every young man a traitor who, having been educated at people's expense, pays not the least heed to them. And to ask yourself, is that slogan valid even today after so many years? Are we still talking about it? Or when he talks about, I do not believe in a God or religion which cannot wipe away the widow's tears or bring a piece of bread to the orphan's mouth. Are we still at the stage where we have to invest our time and energy just in that, or can we move on? And that is where you start asking yourself, how do we connect these aspirations and the potential of young people to the future? And Vivekananda's message is what I would like to use to make that seamless connection. So today's young, they're capable on one side. On one side, their role model against the well-known icons. On the third direction is a the tragic situation where an enormous number of young people, because of this marginalization, the class divides, the caste divides, the geographical divides, just the sheer accident of birth, being born in a tribal or rural area, are left out of the system. So how do we tap into this extraordinary potential? If India is, if 80% of India is less than 40 years old, and today we're talking of formulating the national youth policy and being part of the committee which is doing it, I know that we're looking at young people between 15 and 29 years, which is close to 30% of India's population, the most productive age group, the population which can make an impact for the future. It is not only the current population which can make a difference for India, but also the population which can change India's future. Because 10 years later, they'll be the leaders of the country. And so this powerful population, how do you stimulate the aspirations to understand these stories? And I would like to go back to the Bharat that I know and connect all this. If you look at India or Bharat in the way I would like to see it, all the icons that we have had, if you see it, we had a generation where we celebrated knowledge, and today we're talking about knowledge economy. Thousands of years ago also we celebrated knowledge, where kings like Vishwamitra in his Purvashrama was a king. A king could give up his kingdom because he wanted pursuit of knowledge. And I would like to use the word Brahmin, etc., from the context of just the Varnas and not the caste that we had brought it down to the levels today. So a Kshatriya like Vishwamitra could say, I don't want a kingdom. Pursuit of knowledge is more important to me, and competing with a person like Vashishta is more critical to me, and gives it up and becomes a Brahmin in that sense. So this transmigration was possible in our context those days. And you come, and that time everybody's pursuit was knowledge. So possibly the iconization would have been people who actually had control of knowledge. And so young people would have possibly imitated acquiring knowledge. So you could get an Achiketa, you could get all this, the generation of people we read about. But you look at society progressing, and suddenly valor becomes the privileged commodity, the imitatable commodity. So you had Brahmins like Dronacharya, Kripacharya, and Parshurama and others taking to weaponry and taking to exhibiting valor, where we celebrate the Karnas, the Arjunas, and the Ekalavyas of the world, where we think that Shaurya or valor is more important to us. Society keeps transitioning, right? We all, and that time, whomever we icon, the values they represent becomes the societal values and the aspiration of society of that day. Over time, and come back, fast forward it 1,000 years later, a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old like Sukhdev, Bhagat Singh can give up their lives for Mother India. Suddenly, patriotism and nationalism was a slogan, whether it's Subhash Chandra Bose or Mahatma Gandhi or extraordinary people like Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, Chandrasekhar Azad, and all these great people who gave their lives for this country. For them, seeing in Mother India free from the shackles of colonialism and loving this country was more important to them. So that is a value that was there maybe till independence. Post-independent India, I think the shift started. In 75 years today, and I think the aspiration build up is because of several reasons. Right from a small child, you talk to the child and the parents, when anybody comes home, I still remember in my own case, typical ordinary middle class family, and some friends come, or my father's friend comes, or my family members come, or somebody comes. First thing he'll ask is, which class are you studying in? And that's the most important question. And then they'll ask, what do you want to become? So my career path has to be set by what I'm studying. So we have reinforced an aspiration. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying how the society has progressed, education, employment. And for a long time, I wanted to become an engine driver. I would love steam engines. And I would actually I asked my father to take me to the railway station. And I still remember those days, life was much more simpler. I even remember one of the engine drivers liked my fascination, and he took me from Bangalore city station to Cantonment station. I asked my father to come and pick me up there. Today, you can't imagine all that. Neither would the engine drivers do that, nor can you even imagine steam engines. So, and when I told one of my uncles, he asked me, what do you want to become? I said, I want to become a steam engine driver. I love putting the coal and throwing it into the fire, and I enjoyed it. And he said, oh my God, how can you do that? As though I was committing a crime. As though I said, I'm going to kill 1,000 people. The aspirational values that was set in my mind was, that's the worst thing you can aspire to become. And he said, and then the next statement he made was, but you can hardly make a living being an engine driver. So the aspiration was connected in some sense to acquiring education for the mortal purpose of employment and earning a lot of money. So the generation that we are living in today is acquiring economic benefits in whatever we do. Making money seems to be the sole pursuit of a generation of people who are imitating society, where look at whom do we celebrate. Till the government of India started celebrating Padma Shri as a recognition of extraordinary work for this nation in very, very significant ways, but invisible ways. Till that time, the country celebrated whom? Corporate leaders and CEOs and money makers. And those are the people we always thought we should aspire to become. So we set a narrative of creating economic aspirations for our young people. Thankfully, the last decade is seeing the shift. People are restless. They're not willing to accept this anymore. People question the values. And that's, again, I feel because the parents' generation has possibly acquired enough for the child to take a break and say, you know what, I know I'll not have to starve. The least I can do is dip into my parents' money, but I can think of other things. And I see one more possibility, and that's a potential we have. Before getting to the nuances of how excited I am about young people, look at a demographic dividend. We talk about it. Whenever you talk of young people, you talk of demographic dividend. As it's a slogan, but it can be a dangerous instrument also, because it can be disastrous if you don't manage the young people and demographic dividends. If 80% are less than 40, or 15 to 29 is going to be close to 30%, I connect it in a very strange way to my own personal life. I look at my grandfather. He came from a very small little village, and coming from a priestly family, he had to go house to house doing some priestly duties. 25 paise here. That I still remember in the holidays when I used to visit his house. If he went around doing some priestly work and comes home, he comes with, little rice, a little jaggery, 2 coconut, and then that day we would have some festive food. If he came back with nothing, I wonder how my grandparents made a living. And my father used to tell me stories about how he went hungry for several days at a time. And my grandmother had 5 kids. And my grandfather, with his little income, had to support 7 mouths, apart from his distant cousins and all those things. And so it was like one man's economic gain had to sustain 7, 8 people. His productivity, his aspiration could have been what? His aspiration could have been to feed his family for the next meal. I don't think that man would have had any other aspiration. And maybe at the personal level, he might have said, I want to attain moksha. But at the vyavaharik level, for him, his only aspiration could have been, how do I take care of my family for the next meal? I look at my father's journey, but somehow he managed to invest on his children's education. I look at my father. He had 3 children, and we got the best of education, the best of universities across the world. And he was a central government employee, settled in Bangalore. So my mother was a homemaker, and my father's income, all that he had to worry about was 5 mouths. Only 5 people are dependent on him. So the dependent population, the productive person in the family, was from 7, it came down to 5. Then I look at my own life. I'm a physician, and whatever I do in life, I don't even sometimes know how to describe myself. But whatever I am, me and my wife, an obstetrician, we have 1 son. He graduated from Indian of Science. And so even if I earn something, and me and my wife, both of us earn, we only have 1.5 people to take care of. So you can look at it. And my son doesn't have to worry about me or my wife, and he has only himself to take care of, if at all he wants to take care of himself. That means, look at the exponential fall in the people dependent on the productive populations. So I think the youth of today have possibly the greatest opportunity any young man could have had anywhere in the world. The number of people dependent on him, what in the development world we call the dependency ratios. If we consider people from 15 to 65 as productive in any country, which we hope people will be, the number of people less than 50 and the number of people over 65, the dependent ones, are hardly anything today. The dependency ratios are less than half. So today is the best opportunity for this nation, where if we can create the aspiration of serving India for our young people, and service can be in different ways, and I'll come to that potential later. You cannot get a better window for progress than this, because they are the only generation which can think of not even themselves, half of themselves. That is the kind of power and potential they have. So economically speaking, the dependency ratios are possibly the best place for a country. It's a great privilege. Hardly every nation should be envious of India. And we have the extraordinary knowledge economy flourishing today, where our young people can contribute also. So opportunities, if we can create the right icons, if we can create the right young people to shift the right environment and the aspirational storyline, I think India is at the verge of an economic, not just economic, every kind of transformation. And that is where I think the power and beauty of Swami Vivekananda, because he said, More than 100 years ago, he recognized this power. And he said, my faith is in the younger generation. And that is the depth of his conviction. And he was a young man when he said that. Remember that. Because his life was over by 39. And that extraordinary vision he had. And he gave the message to young people very simplistically. I think the message of, I always call it the message of 3P and 3H. Because his disciples asked him, he says, Alasinga Perumal and friends troubled him in Chennai and said, you keep telling, serve this country, serve this country. Tell us, it's so aspirational and so vast. Tell us in clear, deconstructed terms, what does serving India mean? And why should we even do it? And look at the vision of the extraordinary Swami Vivekananda. He said, in a very simple ways, he said, what do you need? You don't need to become a doctor. You don't need to become an engineer. Today's education, if you look at it, I think brick and mortar education is going to get reevaluated very fast. We have big companies like Amazon and Google, whose annual turnovers are equivalent to several tens of nations' GDP put together. Today, they're talking about recruiting young people, not because they're qualified, but because they're skilled. So it's a big shift. It's not about going to brick and mortar universities and acquiring MS and PhDs, but your ability to comprehend, understand, and deploy the skills that you have, that is going to make you valuable. And one of the critical skills people talk about is 21st century skills. And if you deconstruct Swami Vivekananda and understand the message, everything he spoke about is captured in 2 words. He said the very purpose of education, he said, is only 2 things. Not about information running riot in your brain, undigested. That's the words he used. But he said the purpose of education should be, and he didn't use the word schooling. The purpose of education, he said, was man-making and character building. And man includes woman. It's just those contexts, they were, no, I'll have to be very pronoun politically correct also. But assuming that society, making people, building people was his focus, creating human capital. And today your World Bank talking about human capital index as a measurement of development. Today, I'm a strong voter and hopefully I'll succeed at the government of India and state governments level to bring in youth development index. Because I believe if we can capture the development of young people of this country, that will be a far sensitive and far greater instrument to measure the change of a country rather than GDP or other instruments. So much more than human capital index, if we can develop a youth development index. And what is that? I'll talk a little later. So the opportunity that Swamiji saw in these young people was he realized the youth are going to be attracted by icons, the societal pressures, the distractions that if you can call it. I look at social media and I don't think they're distractions. I think they're misapplied opportunities, the way I look at it. And to me, if you look at all this and take the message of Swami Vivekananda, he so powerfully framed the narrative differently. He said, Atmano mokshartam jagatitayacha. It is evolution of the self through an expression of service to the outside world. And he realized, if you tell a young man today, just imagine a young person today on the streets who watches all the flashy cars go by, the large houses on the roadside, and you tell him, you know what, you should come to me to my village and start serving. How is he going to make you an icon and follow you? Whereas if I go drive in my Mercedes Benz and get out in my Armani suit and flash my Rolex watch at him and say, you know what, this is what you should become in 5 years, you become an aspirational role model. But Vivekananda knew this problem, I think. So he powerfully articulated and said, and if you deconstruct his message, the way I deconstructed it, I see him today, I think he combined the powerful message of private gains for public good. So it is re-articulating our own expression, our inner potential, and manifesting it for societal good. But in seeking that societal good, ensuring private gains. And private gains is not just monetary. It can be knowledge, it can be evolution, it can be visibility, it could be all sorts of things young people aspire for and want to seek affirmation for. And the skill sets you need is just 2 things. Are you man enough to face the country, face the problems that you have? In Swami Vivekananda's words, abhi, 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 fearlessness. He didn't say courage. Remember, that's the beauty of his message for young people today. If you truly want to aspire to imbibe his message, I think 2 messages of Vivekananda to aspire is his positivity and this concept of fearlessness. And fearlessness is a very powerful Indic concept. Western psychology will talk of courage. Courage is the ability to renegotiate your fears. You're still afraid, but you're able to cope with your fear because of your courage. But Vivekananda reframed it. The Upanishadic word of abhi is extremely powerful. It is fearlessness. It is transcending your fears itself, crossing the ocean, transcending it and saying, I am fearless. And that gives you the spirit of adventure. That gives you the power to create. It gives you the energy to walk the talk and be positive. And today we talk, or the Western sciences talk of, suddenly they talk of positive psychology. Whereas India always spoke of satsang, sadvichar. No, everything was sad for us. And in that, the Rig Veda talks of let noble thoughts come to us from all sides. That is the power of positivity. And so I think all that we need are young people, are aspirational role models who understood how to seek private gains in public good, manifest their inner potential for external societal change. Because that is what finally matters today. Today, we talk about circular economies. We talk about for benefit economies, where it is not for the profit bottom line alone, but for understanding of the planet, people, profits, and peace around the world. And it is this message of Swami Vivekananda which can create a cohort of young people who can actually have the skill sets that get embedded in you if you aspire to become that kind of man with the kind of positivity that I spoke about, with the kind of adventurous spirit that embedded in that Abhihi concept that I spoke about. And also be practical. He said you can't have taught Bhagavad Gita on an empty stomach. So he was very practical. That's the beauty of Swami Vivekananda's message. He knew that you have to live in society. He knew that we have to also operate. We have to wear the clothes. We have to drive our vehicles. We have to go to have a house to live in. But that is not the purpose of your existence. He said the real purpose of our existence is seva. He said that is how national ideals got expressed. And he said the national ideals of India should be tyaga and seva. Extraordinary, right? And what did he want us to give up? He didn't want us to. Initially, I thought he wanted me to give up all the physical comforts. So I went and sat in a forest in a hut. Then I realized that is the easiest thing to give up. What's the greatness in that? Anybody can imitate a Gandhi and appear poor. But the difficulty of what to give up is that sense of I, that sense of aham, that sense of I am going to do all this. That is a greater thing to actually, live the message of Swamiji means. He said, don't stand on a pedestal and say, here, my poor man, take my 5 cents. He wanted us not to be seen as going around the world saying, I did this, I did that, but saying that we are privileged to be instruments of change. So that is a quality, that is a 21st century skill that we need today, where you talk of teamwork, you talk of collaboration, you can no longer talk of I am doing it. Today's the world's problems are so complex, the nation's challenges are so complex that you no longer can solve it yourself. Young people need to learn how to work together. They need to transcend their egoistic demands of appreciation, visibility, and power, and say, how do I together bring about a change? And that togetherness can come only when the humility that Vivekananda said, by subsuming your personal egos and looking beyond yourself and looking at that larger dimension of life itself. And that larger dimension of life is Rashtra Seva that Swamiji spoke about. He said, like I repeat the statement, I call every young man a traitor who, having been educated at people's expense, pays not the least heed to them. And today, our aspiration is to pay heed to them. I'm not saying that you should not earn money, you should give up everything. But in whatever you do, can you not lose sight of the nation and nation's good? Why don't you aspire to build the greatest IT company for India? Why don't you aspire to make India, in every sense, a privileged place to live in? Why don't you aspire to bring the most quality conscious nation in the world? Today, we are all tolerant of mediocrity. I find it very sad. Even the youth of today have become so tolerant of mediocrity. They are okay with it. Hey, chalta hai. Demolishing chalta hai attitude should be an aspiration for you. So whatever you do, you want to be a scientist, be a scientist. In fact, Vivekananda says, you want to be a thief, but be the best thief around. Don't satisfy yourself with being a mediocre thief, he says, and get caught also. So I'm not saying you should do all that. He just gives it as an analogy. But whatever we do, whether you want to be a social worker, whether you want to be a scientist, whether you want to be an engineer, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, whether you want to be a teacher, anything that you choose to do, aspire to be the best. You can never be the second best. Our nation needs to be the best. And by showing the world how to do it, we become the Jagat Guru. So Jagat Guru is not standing on a pedestal and talking, come and imitate me. Jagat Guru is just living the message and then people imitating you on their own. And I think we can do that only if our young people can aspire to make India that. So the real aspiration should be my personal evolution, transcending mediocrity, believing in myself. He said, faith in yourself. He said, if the olden world called having no faith in God as an atheist, I call every young man who has no faith in himself as an atheist. So believe in yourself. Don't listen to the voice of negativism around you and say that, you know what, you can't do this. I used to watch children climb trees and their parents will come running out and say, no, you will fall down. Don't climb. No, we have such a big don't list in our country that we don't have a to-do list, that we started believing that we are useless. I think we need to deconstruct all that and say, go out there, you can do a lot of things. And that is what the young of today should do. We can build a great India and aspire for that. Never aspire to be second best, because you're not. You're all agents of change created in the vision of God. And if you can just understand that, it's like what the youth of today should do is, you're all standing in front of a mirror. I see two kinds of images. I see young people, one set of young people standing in front of a mirror and saying, oh my God, I can't see my image properly. And these young people have to be told, you know what, it's not a problem in you. The mirror is covered with dust. Wipe the mirror and see yourself as you truly are. And that is what you need. And once you do that, they excel. I see another category of young people. The mirror is beautiful. The first category keeps blaming themselves and say, oh God, I'm not good enough. I'm not capable, because the mirror is not wiped. So they don't look at the mirror, they look at themselves, and they have no compassion for themselves. They have no faith in themselves, no potential, conviction in their own potential. But once the mirror is wiped and you show them the direction and the right models for them, and they go and flourish. The other kind of category of people, they think, they're standing in front and, of the mirror looking clean, and they're constantly actually blaming everybody else and say, oh, India is useless. India mein acha nahi hai, rasta theek nahi hai, corruption hai, wo nahi ho chalega, ye nahi hoga, all these narratives. And if they actually truly look into the mirror, their face is dirty. And they are saying the mirror is dirty where my face is seen, and that is why my face is looking dirty. I'm okay. But the system is not okay. I think both the kinds of young people should change. The real aspiration should be, ask yourself if I've got enough skill set, enough conviction, belief in myself, and then say, I'm privileged to be born in a country like India. Be extraordinarily positive. And I can tell you, we are privileged. We are living through such extraordinary times today that we are rediscovering our power and potential. And that is how we can build the future of tomorrow. COVID, I think, was the greatest opportunity India had. It is a problem. As a doctor, I can tell you it is a great public health problem. But let's look at the silver lining. Don't get trained to look at the dark clouds. If you are a follower of Vivekananda, you'll suddenly look at the silver lining and say, yes, what did I learn from COVID? COVID brought the worst in us, is what people think. No, COVID brought the best in us in India. There is no country in the world which managed COVID as well as we did. We must be proud that we are able to vaccinate millions of people. No nation can even imagine to vaccinate in such a short time. Look at the power of Indian technology. We could manufacture the vaccines here. We could give it to the world outside. We could also take care of the world. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam was actually done. And today, imagine if public health systems had not taken care of us. We're always critical. We say oxygen supply nahi hai, wo nahi hai, ye nahi hai. But we're all alive. Huh? Don't forget that. And we are all alive because our systems actually worked. And today, I even had my third dose a few days ago. It's because the system actually is putting nowhere in the world. If you go to America, and one of my friends from America showed me his vaccination certificate. It was like that olden day milk coupon. No, if you give it to the corner Xerox shop, he will make a certificate and give you. But look at India. You can go to Arogya Setu, you can go to COVID. You can actually see who gave you the vaccine, which day, what time, what vaccine was given to you. And that kind of tracking, which country can do. So we have achieved a lot, my young friends. We are transitioning enormously. But do you want to be part of this journey? Do you want to be part of this transition? That's a question you have to ask. And to do that, how do you prepare yourself? What do you need? Every 5 years, I think people bring out this report, this consulting firms, one consulting firm brings out a report called Mega Trends. What are the trends around the world? I'm sure COVID has altered it. It has presented, like I said, challenges. Young people lost opportunities for education maybe, but as much as they lost opportunity to brick and mortar education, they might have got opportunities in other kinds of education. If you really believe education is character building and man making, you couldn't have got a better opportunity. One side, people say we went through enormous mental health challenges. I look at the other way and said, how do you negotiate your mental health challenges and still develop resilience? Several young people have become extremely resilient today because they know they can face up to situations. They can actually live up to the problems. They can not only cope with crisis, but they can renegotiate the crisis and come out stronger. That is a silver lining you got to look for. And I think that's what we can learn from. And if you look at mega trends, How do you actually transact? What is the Bhagavad Gita on an empty stomach versus Bhagavad Gita on a full stomach? What do you need for a full stomach today? Are very small skills. And how would I place it? Today, the mega trends in a very economic framework, I'm talking, very financial framework. What you really need is not some extraordinary competence. All you need is a basic understanding of emerging technologies today. And how do you redeploy it? How do you apply it is a choice you have. You can apply it for your personal gain, or you can say, while applying it, I'll also generate some personal gain, but I'll keep society good in mind. How do you frame it that way? So can you create an aspiration for young people where you frame the message of private gain for public good, or Atmano Mokshartam Jagatitaya of Swami Vivekananda, or the concept of arising and awaking and not stopping? We might fail, we'll get up again, we'll do it again. And looking at acquiring those knowledge, simple things of emerging technologies, such powerful opportunities, whether it's AI, ML, or data management skills. But more importantly, I would go to the character making man-making character building. The way I see it is leadership. How do you acquire that extraordinary leadership? And that's what the book that Ashokji was talking about is Leadership Lessons for Everyday Living. It draws its inspiration from Vivekananda, his life, from all the extraordinary people I have seen and observed, and from our Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. And how do you actually acquire this extraordinary leadership traits, the sense of positivity, the sense of faith in yourself, the sense of creating hope, this energy where you can actually lead by living the example and not by imitating examples, by becoming the example yourself. And if you have that as your basis on which you build your decisions, then the tools that you get, they're all only tools, whether it's MIAL and all this social media skills that you can acquire. And if you keep the mantra as how do I create societal good? And the nation today is in the cusp of opening the social stock exchange, which again, like Ashok said, I'm a part of having it set up. And these are opportunities for you to actually express the good for the world and create employment for thousands of young people and build a cohort of youngsters who not only believe in themselves, but believe in the power and potential of our great country. If you can understand the past of Bharat, if you can understand, decode her, deconstruct the enormous wealth of scriptural wisdom that we have, and build the future based on that scriptural wisdom. If you can understand how to combine living for today, performance for today in a quality conscious world, without losing sight of what is going to emerge tomorrow, keeping transformance of the nation and yourself in mind without sacrificing performance for today, I think that is a generation of young people that we want, who can redefine what India will become, what India should be, and put it back in the rightful place where we belong, the community of nations. I think that is the way, like Vivekananda said, resplendent Mother India on her throne, becoming a role model for the rest of the world. Because in that, we'll teach the world that prosperity is not just financial. We will teach the world that prosperity and peace can go together. We'll teach the world where equality, justice, fairness, equity are not slogans in a political drama, but lived experiences based on the universalism that Vivekananda spoke about. Where even the smallest person, Vivekananda said, even if a dog in my country goes hungry, I cannot tolerate it. So it's not, dog is just an expression. It means nothing in India should be for want of anything. That's the power. So where the pashu, the pakshi, the entire ecosystem, everything is a matter of concern for us. And that is the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam message for us. Everything that God has created is part of our family. And that expansive thinking, that inclusiveness, that very desire to make the world a better place, I think that is a future that our young people should create. And I believe that we are at a stage where many of you are walking in that direction. But my hope is you'll no longer walk, but you'll run. The moment you read Vivekananda says it himself, like I explained. He says, if I can enter through a pore of your skin, I'll work magic within you that you will not be able to throw me out after that. And I think that is a message you got to understand. 2 small books, his call to the nation and to the youth of India, changed my life completely. I'm still understanding them. They're small books. If you just read his lectures from Colombo to Almora, you cannot sleep. You want to get up and run and do something for this country. And I think that is the kind of future we must create for ourselves. Keep asking yourselves, now what is it? How do I express the Vivekananda inside me? So for me, the future is not one Vivekananda, but a million Vivekanandas blooming through each one of you. And if that happens, that is aspiration this country should have, where we create, 30% of India, if they become Vivekanandas, just imagine. There's no stopping this country. There's no stopping the world itself. Because that we'll be the true world leaders. And that is how we should be a world leader. By living the message of our practical Vedanta through the way Vivekananda interpreted it, where societal good happens. And in that seeking our own inner salvation, in that sense, desire for perfection, but through expression for the outside world. I think in that powerful way, he combined a great experience for every one of us to undergo. And I can promise you this, just do that, your life will be different. I'm going to stop here. I know I planned, as per what Kumar had told me, 35, 40 minutes of my talking. So I think I've done enough. I'm going to pause here and open it up for any questions that any of you might have. And I want to thank Sewa International. Sewa is not another organization for me. Sewa is like a second home, because I know the amount of work Sewa did for COVID is something which every one of us associated with that organization feels proud of. And extraordinary work across the country, not in here and there. Maybe they may not have spoken about how much they did, but a lot of work has happened. So I'm really privileged that I could share some of my thoughts today with all of you. And through sharing these thoughts, hopefully all of us together will be one large cohort of mini Vivekanandas in the search of that divine experience by serving this great country of ours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. It's always a privilege listening to you. So we have a bunch of questions lying with us. There are 20 plus questions that are lying with us. Some of these questions were received before on the form itself. We had an option to put up the questions on the form. So I'll just read some of them first and then go to some live questions as well.
Sure.
So the first question is, sir, that how to make youth realize the importance of Sewa itself and how to help youth in procuring employment along with this public awareness. And public awareness is in quotes.
There's a misunderstood understanding of Sewa. Sewa is not giving up something and doing something else. Sewa is finding meaning of societal good in whatever you do. We have to redefine this understanding of Sewa. Sewa is an attitude, it's a spirit. I'm walking on the roadside, I find a piece of paper on the street. The moment I feel that this piece of paper is polluting my mother earth, my mother India, take it out and put it in the right place. That is Sewa. So you can be anybody you want, but you can still do that. If I'm walking on the street, I see a hungry child crying, and I say, no Indian should go hungry, and I can buy 2 bananas and give it to her. You can find 1,000 reasons to participate. What matters is not the act, but the intent behind the act. And that is what is the way Vivekananda said, Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva. Serving the living embodiments of God. And the act that you do is an expression of that worship of the divinity in the other person. So understanding yourself, understanding the other, and this transactional work that you do in the recognition of that spirit inside. That is why Vivekananda said, to help anybody is blasphemy. That is his message. It's sacrilegious to think that you can help. Because in help, there's an expectation. In help, you say, when I do something for you, you say, thank you, I feel happy. If you don't say, I say, look at that fellow. No gratitude at all. You didn't even thank me. That is help. That is the Western way of interpreting. In India, we talk of Seva, where Seva is not done seeking anything. It's completely unconditional, but seen as an opportunity of celebrating the divinity within you. Every act that you do, you can sit in your office and earn money. Nobody's saying don't earn money. But how you earn that money, the spirit in which you do it, the attitude in which you perform, and the focus that you do. But every human, if I'm a doctor, if a patient comes to me, can I see the divinity in the patient? If I'm an IAS officer sitting as a deputy commissioner of a district, can I see every person coming to me as an opportunity to express the divinity in them and worship it? That is Seva. So Seva, as per Vivekananda, is not just act. He also describes it further, and he says, all these expressions, you can see it in 3 spaces, 3 domains. The first, the simplest, the easiest, he says, is physical domain. Sharirik Seva. Can I celebrate the body of Kumar and say, what can I do for you? So all the old age homes we construct, all the anathalayas we run, all the hospitals we run is to take care of your body. So anything you do in the pursuit of that is that Sharirik Seva. Then he says, you can, as you do this, after some time you'll grow restless. You'll feel incomplete and say, I want to do more. Every one of us in this space feel that. I'm sure you feel that a lot of times. You keep coming to me with that feeling. The next thing is Bauddhik Seva. How do I create the general awareness? How do I create education? How do I provide opportunities through all this? And then Vivekananda says the highest expression of Seva is Adhyatmik Seva. Initially, my understanding was when he said Adhyatmik Seva, I thought it is about I doing Adhyatmik Seva for others and ensuring everybody grows spiritually. That is my wrongful interpretation. As I get closer to the light, I understand what Vivekananda must have meant. And I think he meant it. Is when you do the Sharirik and Bauddhik Seva, selflessly, unconditionally, no expectation, no visibility, nothing, and you use it as an opportunity to see the divine in the other, you're actually doing Adhyatmik Seva to yourself. And that is the Atmano Mokshartham. The first two are powerful expressions of Jagat Hita. The third is an opportunity for Atmano Mokshartham. And I think this is how you do it. And you can do it anywhere, anytime, in anything you do. So if it's attitude that matters, attitude is completely under your control. And that's all you need.
Thank you, sir. The second question is about the skills. You mentioned about the pursuit of knowledge as a part of the past. You talked about the pursuit of valor as something that happened in the Middle Ages. The economy became something. Then you talked about the recent ongoing recent times and how people are pursuing nation building as a mission itself. One is asked about the kind of skills that you think every youth should have. If everyone has a chance to build all sort of skills, what are the first three skills that one should focus on as young people?
I'll give the answer Vivekananda gave to Alsinga Parimal and friends. And I didn't complete it when he started talking, but he said 3H. Very simple. Heart to feel. He wanted emotional evolution in one of us. Just the heart to feel. Feel for the poor, the marginalized, the downtrodden. Feel till your heart reels, your mind reels, and your heart stops, and you think you'll fall down dead. When that kind of feeling comes for our country, when that kind of feeling comes to do something for India, that's the first skill you have got. You can call it, it's a behavioral skill, if you can call it that in the language of the modern. Second, Swamiji says the hands to work. Sorry, the head to think. Once you feel passionate about changing something, if you feel passionate, I got to build the best IT company in this world. I'm feeling bad that India doesn't have something to be proud of. Why can't we build an Amazon in India? Why can't we have a Google in India? That's feeling too. Then you ask yourself, what do I need to acquire a skill sets to deliver on that feeling? I can't just feel great. I must deliver something. And then you'll say, okay, I have to learn about IT. I have to learn about computer science. I have to learn something. Then give your 100% to it. And give your 100% to whatever you do. That's the Bhagavad Gita. Without saying that will acquire it, will I succeed? No, those are all nothing to worry about. Those are the fruits of your action. Just give your 100% to it and acquire that. Head to think. And then you got to go do your work yourself. Hands to work. So it's a framework. The behavioral attitude, the actual cognitive skills, and the reason to apply it with a kind of determination. And for that, Vivekananda says you need 3 P's. All you need is 3 P's. First, he says purity. Purity of thought, word, deed, purpose, integrity, everything. Next is patience. You're all belonging to a generation of Control Alt Delete. You press Control Alt Delete, you think that everything will change. You need extraordinary patience. 75 years we've traveled a particular path post-independent India. You can't say in 75 days I'll change it. Give yourself. Thousands of people have worked for hundreds of years. Let us now at least give something of ourselves. Millions of people have died to create this independent India. One more person dying like you is not a problem. The way I see it. Give yourself completely. Vivekananda says it. He says, life is short. Give it up to a great cause. I shared this with you. He says, work till you fall down dead from sheer exhaustion. That is the spirit we need to have. And he says purity, patience, perseverance. Because we give up very easily. Oh, I tried, you know what? नहीं चलेगा. तो ये सिस्टम ठीक नहीं है. यहाँ तो encouragement ही नहीं है. Oh, banking system खराब है. Credit नहीं मिलता है. We always find, it's very strange. I always tell young people, why are we giving excuses for our failures? Why don't you start discovering reasons to succeed? That is the Vivekananda way. The traditional way is a complaining way. The mirror is not full of dust, or my face is clean, but the mirror is not reflecting properly. That is the way where we give excuses for our failures. Wiping the dust away, washing our face. Both these actions that I told of earlier is the way of saying that, you know what? I can do it. That's the perseverance we need. And I think that's all you need.
There's a question that is linked to this, sir. Varadha Jagadaji is asking, in this era of infinite scrolling, where youth have so much information and opportunities, and the time on, multitasking and distraction are often mistaken. Is it difficult to focus on is it difficult to focus on one skill, one purpose, one work? What would you guide on dedication?
And again, go back to Swami Vivekananda. He said, take up one cause and one cause alone. Think of it, leave it, breathe it, sleep on it. And there is no way you can fail. I think that's the kind of determination we need. It is true that you're going to be distracted, but ask yourself, instead of saying yourself, how many things I'm distracted by, ask yourself, what is the one thing I can be attracted towards? And just take it as a life's cause. You got to, it's like the story in the Buddhist story where two monks are walking along, and the senior monk and the junior monk are there. The junior monk tells the senior monk, have you seen God? Have you seen God? He keeps troubling him. After some time, the senior monk gets tired of this fellow's nuisance, and then he takes him and he's walking by a river. He takes him to the river and pushes him into the water. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa would narrate this story. Pushes him into the water, and that fellow feels, oh my guru, don't kill me, I'm going to die. And then he pulls him out. And he asks, when you thought you're going to die, what were you thinking about? He said, the only thing on my mind was I have to come out of the water and live. He said, the day that you have that single-minded pursuit of knowing God, you'll find God. I think our youth of today should also feel that way for whatever one purpose they believe in. And instead of giving excuses of distraction, ask yourself, what is your life's purpose? What is the one attraction that you have? It's a lovely girl that you're in love with and she's your life's attraction. Single-mindedly you pursue her. Just imagine if you can single-mindedly loving our country, what else you need?
Thank you. Some people have mentioned about, so someone is working with Bharat district administration along with Niti Aayog, and he has 1 year of engagement with there. The person is asking what can be the key focus areas of his work, and can be location specific or you can keep it broad as well. If someone has one area of serving a district, what should be the focus area?
Come again. I lost you a little bit in the middle. Please come again.
So need your guidance to make the best use of my 1 year long engagement with Bharat district administration and Niti Aayog's fellow.
I think the big challenge comes, did you ever ask yourself, why did I join Niti Aayog? Many of us join it because we want to add it to our CV. We are all exploring different things, and some of us want to because we are serving. And if you decided to find that as a platform for service, then you will discover it. If it's not for satisfying you as a platform for service, quit and go and find something else. Have the courage to walk away from what things are not paying off for you. I think that is what the spirit of adventure I spoke about, that Vivekananda spoke about. When I say fearlessness, today we are all caught in so many things. Fortunately or unfortunately, I became a doctor. But I had the courage to say medicine is not my calling. And I had my fun. So I have traveled across so many things. I'm not too sure what I am, but I can definitively say that I have convictions in whatever I do. So I think if you're serving as a Niti Aayog fellow in whichever place you are, and in an aspiration district or wherever you are, and if you really feel happy doing it, then you have found the right place. Put your heart into what you're doing 100%. Don't get into this trap of asking, am I doing good? Who are you to ask all that? Don't measure. Just give you 100%. Giving you 100% to whatever you do is excellence. That's all. That's the opposite of mediocrity. Mediocrity is not below average. Mediocrity is just doing the ordinary. And you have an option, just being the ordinary or putting extraordinary effort into whatever ordinary things you're doing. And that's all you need to do. So wherever you are, whatever you do, give your 100%. That is all the message of the Gita. Not ask yourself, what will my 100% get me? Will the district improve? Will people do well? That is not your business. That's a divine's business to satisfy. Your business is to give your 100%. I can promise you one thing by experience. When you give your 100%, magic happens. You don't have to look at the magic, but it will happen.
Thank you so much, sir. Someone has asked if I have the skills for a function and can be best at it. However, I have aspirations to be a leader, but unable to be effective in leadership. What should I do? Focus on my function and give up on leadership?
I think we need to clarify what is a leader, what is leadership. I don't even believe in the word leader, because I think that's a very flawed understanding. A leader sort of symbolizes a person, and makes you a 24/7 person sitting on a pedestal somewhere out there. I think all of us, none of us should aspire to be leaders. What we should aspire for is to exercise good leadership. That's completely different. How would I define leadership? Leadership is simply an activity. It's very action oriented, whereas leader is a noun, and I don't believe in the noun form. I believe in the verb form. Leadership is an activity of mobilizing oneself and resources around us. It could be physical, it could be human, it could be every kind of resource to do something societally constructive amidst enormous uncertainty. That is the Bhagavad Gita way. You are not sure what's going to happen. Doesn't matter. You just mobilize yourself and people around you for something societally constructive, irrespective of what happens because of it. And in a simpler way, if I were to define leadership, leadership to me is a journey of understanding yourself, understanding others around you, and asking yourself, what are the actions that connect me, the self, to the others? And if that is seva, that is leadership. If the actions are societal, that is leadership. So in whatever functions we do, we can find true leadership expressions. Because if you are a specialist in one particular function, mobilize yourself in others and your specialization and people around you for something societally good. That is a great expression of leadership. That is a spiritual journey I write about in my book too.
So this is a question that that I can link back to some part of your as well. You mentioned about education system and how it is changing. Someone has asked about what changes are you expecting in the education system ahead, and I would just like to plug in one of my own points as well. That the national education policy, how well do you think it is aligned to some of these ideas, and what more do you foresee in the future?
I think the NEP is the best thing that happened to this country. In a very simplistic way, possibly as a policy analyst, my understanding of NEP is one of the finest policies that's been crafted by some very good people, very well-meaning people. It's founded on the foundation of, in my opinion, Swami Vivekananda and his message of man-making and character building, and given a very practical approach to it. I think if it is implemented with the spirit in which it has been formed and crafted, that is a transitional pathway for India. That is the journey that we have to undertake. So what we need are people who can actually deconstruct it properly, understand it, create the leaders to implement it, the enormous people who can transact it in the way in which it should be transacted. It may take 10 to 15 years. It's not easy, but let's be patient. At least we have a vision now. See, you can create a strategic vision, but you need people to execute it, to implement the strategic vision. So the implementation strategy needs to be crafted, which for primary education has nearly been done, the 68-page document that is there. Similarly, for higher education, the process is going to just start, and I'm part of that process too. So I'm sure that we're going to do something soon. And once that is done, I think that is all that you need. So that is the one which creates the behavioral attitudes that I spoke about, character making, man making and character building. It also gives opportunities for building the skills, the head to think, and it will create the platform where you can actually express yourself with the hands to work. So to me, it is possibly a very practical expression of not just Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda is all Vedanta, right? So to me, Vivekananda articulated Vedanta in a practical way, in an extremely extraordinary English way, so that the whole world can benefit by it. And I think that practicalization of that is NEP. That's the way I look at it.
So two people have asked in the chat. I'm just combining their questions. Vivekananda thought on who can or who should follow celibacy and how to follow it.
See, Swami Vivekananda was very clear on certain things. There are extraordinary benefits to brahmacharya. So Swamiji, especially when we are all students pursuing knowledge in a very concrete, condensed form, we need a lot of intellectual energy to go into it. That is a time when Vivekananda said brahmacharya is extremely important, continence and celibacy. Now, that's proved today. That kind of energy that you can generate by focusing on something when you're not distracted by physical needs of sex and other things is a powerful force. But then Swami Vivekananda also writes in Karma Yoga, very nicely written. He says, each is great in his own place. Is sannyasa better or grihasthashrama better? And he says, he gives like very story ways of describing it. And he says, each is great in his own place. Without a grihastha, society cannot run. So he says, it's better to be a good householder than a bad sannyasi. So let's all not say which is better or which is bad. So I think during the phase of intense intellectual acquisitions, celibacy is great. And Vivekananda never spoke of suppression. He spoke of sublimation, and there's a huge difference. It is not bottling up your sexual needs and saying, I'm good, control. That is not what Swamiji spoke about. He spoke about sublimation. And today in the world, there's a great book by um, one of the books by Martin Seligman, the positive psychologist, talks about learned optimism, where he says you shift your thinking from something that's distracting you and making you negative into something that's positive. And Vivekananda gives a similar example and says, if you're troubled by these thoughts, and at that point of time, you don't want to be, it's an option. It's a biological need. As a doctor, I can say this is place for it. Society will not progress. Procreation is a biological reproductive function. But if it is beyond that for you, sublimate it and replace it with a more powerful positive thought. And then focus back on what you're doing. So celibacy is a very powerful instrument available to us when we are seriously pursuing intellectual acquisition. I'm not saying you cannot acquire it otherwise if you're not celibate. Don't get me wrong. The enormous energy that you can unleash and a condensed time frame to acquire things is much more stronger if you have that. That's all I will say.
Someone had just asked a follow-up question on that. Can you share some books on celibacy?
I don't think you have to think about books. Just ask yourself what you want to do in life and how do you want to use it. And if staying celibate is more important to you, I'm sure you'll find your reasons for doing it. If sexual distractions are becoming a nuisance to you, then I think you need to see a psychiatrist.
Balasubramaniam, someone senior has asked that there is one generation who was away from a lot of such literature and scriptures. There is a generation who was distanced from it in pursuing the modern education. And now they realize the importance of bringing this knowledge to young teenagers, while they themselves are not aware of this. How do we bridge this gap?
I think it's a transitionary process, and we are slowly discovering it. I would explain it this way: like, let's look at Sai Deepak, right? Engineer, lawyer, and suddenly discovers our own strength and civilizational wisdom, and then goes deep into it. He didn't have to acquire degrees; he went and wrote about it. So we have people like that, different people like that who are going deeper and deeper. So you can either pursue it. Today, technology gives us opportunities to pursue it on our own. Today, your formal institutions emerging, like AICTI set up a indigenous knowledge systems cell where they're promoting it. So you can actually get it and see whether you can scientifically validate that material and acquire it. You have extraordinary material published by Ramakrishna Mission, you have material published by Chinmaya Mission, and all these people who talk about it. I know that Sadguru Jagir Vasudev talks about a lot of it in his talks, etc. So we can look at it. We have opportunities like, I love listening to Swami Sarvapriyananji and his talks. He combines the science, the beauty of science, spirituality, and put it in a very articulate way for younger people. So I think today we have options. Either you can do self-study, you can acquire knowledge, you can go about doing it and get it from the right source. As doctors, we would always say, we talk of sex education, you got to get it from the right source and not from the wrong pornographic sources. I think spirituality and understanding God and religion also is like that. Go to the right source, the right material, and then explore it through yourself. And some of us are privileged to get gurus. I was fortunate in my life. I had extraordinary guru from whom I could get diksha and guidance. So many of us are privileged like that. Some of us may not be, but today have opportunities also. But the most important is one statement Vivekananda says. He says you can read all the books on spirituality, Vedanta, everything. But if you don't practice one little bit of it, it's of no use to anybody. And he also says you can't keep talking chemistry. You can't do Japan chemistry and then expect to become a chemist overnight. You've got to go into a lab, you've got to do things, you've got to burn your hands, break a few test tubes, and then you learn chemistry. I think this journey is like that. Knowing about India and its scriptural strengths, or wisdom, or knowledge, all the Upanishadic powerhouse that we have, is by trying to read about it, learn a little bit, experience it, challenge it, validate it, throw it out of the window if it's not working for you. That's the beauty of Bhagavad Gita itself, right? Krishna says, if it doesn't work for you, throw me out. Vivekananda says the same thing. Take my ideas. If you don't believe in it, throw it out of the window. It's of no use to anybody. But have the courage to try it out first. Start with faith and try it out. If it doesn't work, come back and criticize it. But I can promise you, if it works, and you'll be a great advocate of it for others. That's all I can say.
Thank you, sir. Mubarak Ali ji has asked, if you had an advice to give to your own 25-year-old self, what would you say and why?
Continue to believe in yourself. Ask yourself every time I run into a problem, ask yourself, what would Vivekananda do in this situation? And just do it. So I just tell myself, what would Swamiji do now? What would Swamiji's advice be for you now? And go jump into it and do it. And it's like, it's dangerous. It's like asking a person to jump into the ocean and swim safely across. But have the faith that Vivekananda is your raft. Vivekananda is your boat, and he'll take you across. That kind of faith, that kind of unshakable faith, I would tell my 25-year-old, never lose it. I've had times when I've lost it. I've had times when I've questioned it. I've had times when I've forgotten Vivekananda. When I'm 25 years ago, if I had 25 again, I will say, remember, he's worked magic on you. Don't forget his words. Don't forget what he has done for you. Just hold on to it. It is a life jacket you should never lose. Because I've lost it once, I'll tell myself, never lose it again.
There's a question from Chetanji, and perhaps there will be only one more question beyond this. This is about young people finding out their own career. There is a lot of information, there is a lot of choices. It has increased the chaos in the mind of a young person. What parameters, what forms of decision making the person should take to decide what is the career path the person wants to choose or select or enter into?
I think the indicators of success are a flawed instrument today. If the indicators of success are visibility, fame, name, and money making, then become an actor, right? Or a cricketer or whatever. I'm just joking, but I think we need to reframe the indicators. If the indicators of everything that we do is, am I passionate about doing this? Do I seek in the deeper purpose of what I'm doing? Is it going to be societal good that's emerging? It could be any space that you see, and do I have the skill sets to match it? So if I want to create a great IT company, or if I want to set up a new social enterprise, first of all, am I passionate about it? Do I have the skill sets to do it? And will I help society move a little further down in a better way? That's the direction I would give. And the last thing I would say is, why do we even take it on ourselves to mentor somebody? Just live your convictions. Without your knowledge, you'll be influencing a large number of people to follow the kind of convictions you live, and they'll find their answers. So I think helping our young people to frame the right questions to themselves is the greatest mentorship you can offer. Not giving them answers. Giving them answers takes away the dignity of self-exploration, taking away the joy of self-discovery. But just giving them opportunities to frame the questions the right way to themselves, and giving them the courage that you can find your answers. That's the greatest mentorship you can do.
Thank you so much, sir. This is my final question, and this is a question that comes from a discussion within our office itself. A lot of us want to travel, and there are various ways to travel right now. You have some experiential programs. You have a host of places that are in tourist must-see lists. There are a number of places that are now in public awareness thanks to the internet. If someone has to travel the country, can you suggest 5 good places to be?
What a wrong question to ask me. Just this morning, I saw a circular from the Secretary of Tourism saying that when Government of India has to organize events, when things are permitted, where should we do them? It should be done in historically significant spots where we can actually learn about the spot. It could be Varanasi, it could be Hampi, it could be Bodh Gaya and stuff like that. Personally, for me, I can tell you my favorite spots. I can't tell you what will be the best spots to travel to, but I can tell you my favorite spots. And I would say for me, Kanyakumari would be a favorite spot. And obviously, I've gone there several times. For me, Ahmedabad, Sabarmati is a favorite spot. Whenever I feel low, that's a spot I would like to spend some time in. I'm earning to do the Chardham Yatra. And that's something which I've not done, and I'd love to do it. Someday, I hope when I'm still physically okay, I want to do the Manas Gangotri stuff. And that is something which I'm earning for. I hope I'll get to do it. And I'm waiting for Ayodhya to happen. And I've been there before. Now I want to wait till it emerges in all its glory as an expression of conviction of a group of people in themselves. And I would like to go see it. I hope I completed my list of 5 spots. I have Soumya's question, which is visible. This young lady wants to know, if you could ask Swamiji something today, what would you ask? You have to put me in a spot, Soumya. I would ask him to give me the courage to believe in myself all the time, the wisdom to let me know when I'm losing my humility, and the sense of egolessness which I'm desperately trying to achieve, but I've not been able to. So if I were to ask a boon of Vivekananda, that will be the boon I'll ask Soumya. And Biren wants to know, another friend wants to know, what is Vivekananda advice on how to walk on the narrow, straight path? I just think all of us tacitly know right and wrong. And to me, as long as you have the courage to discover whenever, most of us know when we are actually taking the wrong path. There's some voice telling us, you know what, but we are very willing to compromise with that voice and say, you know what, it's okay. It doesn't hurt anybody. But we don't realize it will hurt us in the long run. So to me, I have a very simple way. I don't know how to walk, but I can tell you how I walk on my narrow, straight path. I always, when I'm walking, when something troubles me and my inner voice says, you're taking a shortcut, I simply stop and walk back. So that's always worked for me, and that's how I lived my life. And that's what people call it non-conformity. It's not non-conformity. It is deep conviction. There's a difference. And just faith in the words of wisdom of the scriptural strength that I think I read from the Gita. It's my interpretation. Obviously, they're interpretational. But the easier interpretation is when I read Vivekananda, I get the powerful messages that I think can help me guide my life, and just live it. So it is actually not narrow. The straight path is very wide. We see it as narrow for convenience sake, and then say I have to find sidestep because it's not convenient to walk on it. It's too narrow to walk. I think it's a wide path, and it's an excuse we give ourselves and call it narrow and sidestep. And that's the way I look at it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for my life. Thank you for passing on and filtering the message of Swami Vivekananda to us. And thank you for being a mentor figure to all of us in this audience set, and thousands and lakhs of other people like all of us. Thank you for being guide, a mentor, a powerful and energetic figure, and acting as an inspiration for all of us. I hope that we will be able to manifest real change in the way you aspire and you imagine from all of us. Thank you so much, sir.
Not the change, but being instruments of the change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the audience, we'd just like to announce about the next Sewa Samwaad as well. We have the next Sewa Samwaad happening on 12th of February, Saturday. At the same time, on the topic of realizing Arogya Swaraj, we are talking about healthcare in the ongoing wave of pandemic, and we felt this is an apt topic. This is a shared version from the past. It was scheduled last month but could not happen. So 12th of February, we are having it with Dr. Abhay Bang, who is a Padma Shri awardee and works in the domain of public health. And we'll talk about how to bring health in our own hands. So we'll meet again on 12th of Feb. And hopefully on the lines of Swami Vivekananda's message on young people and the power of youth, hopefully Sewa International, SVYM will be bringing something soon on the lines of getting young people involved in the field of Sewa and service. Thank you so much. The link to the next Sewa Samwaad is